This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome back, everybody, to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. I am your host today, Carl Sweeney, bringing you some post-Season 8 coverage. We're looking today at the difference between the script for Season 8 and what we actually saw on screen. We did a similar episode roughly this time last year about Season 7. And Cathy Glinski's back with us. The script, I was going to say master, mistress, I don't know what the term is. The script guru, I think. Hi, Cathy.
Hi. I'm glad to be here. This was fun. I actually had every script for Season 8 to read this time, so a lot to choose from.
Wow, that was going to be my question, actually. So you had them all already, or you've found a few for this recording expressly, or you just had them, or what?
I've been searching, and it just turned out that like right before I got to Season 8 in my rewatch, I got all the rest of the scripts. So as I watched Season 8, I read every single script and took notes on it so that we could do this when we got to it. Yeah. So I think that in the last time we talked, I had about 100 scripts, and now I've got everything from seasons 1 through 9, plus Fight the Future and my Struggle 3 and 4. So it's a lot of script reading. Yeah.
Wow. Now, Cortlan Waters Bartley is also with us, and I'm guessing is as impressed as I am about that. Those facts there from Cathy.
I am blown away. That's amazing. It's so many scripts.
It is.
I think I have like 2. So.
Oh, interesting. Amazing. So what have you got, Cortlan?
Actually, one a copy of Beyond the Sea, and I can't remember, a contest that the X-Files News hosted. I think it was one of the pumpkin carving contests, like a long time ago. Yeah. And then I think I have some just like PDF versions of a couple, but I think Beyond the Sea is the only one that I have that's like printed and like, it's cool though.
A lot of mine are PDFs. I do have several production used. And that's why I ended up getting so many. There was a seller on eBay, like right around Christmas last year, who came out with production used scripts from the California years, so seasons 6 through 9, and they have notes on them that the people who worked on the show wrote, and so I bought a lot of those.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think the way this is going to work is Cathy has put together very kindly a document that we're all looking at here, which is comprised of bits and pieces about scripts, script elements from Season 8. So I think we're just going to work through this, aren't we? Cortlan and I are going to react and possibly role play at various points, it sounds like.
I'm so sorry in advance.
Yeah. I think it makes sense, doesn't it, to start with the beginning of Season 8, Cathy? So we're going to Within, of course, Season 8, Episode 1. What do you want to kick us off with?
Okay. This is something I noticed as I was reading all of Season 8 in one batch that I had never noticed before. A lot of the Season 8 scripts contain references to shooting in 48 frames per second and then 24 frames per second. And it's possible that they had this in earlier seasons and I just don't remember, but I don't think so. I think that this could be a technique that they're just starting to use more in Season 8. And my understanding is that when you shoot 48 frames per second, as opposed to what normal shooting is, which is 24, you can slow it down and it doesn't look jumpy. So you get the nice, you move into slow-mo, but it's smooth and it just fits right in. And they use that a lot in this season. And the first time I noted it was in this season, this episode, the scene in Within, and it's Scully walking into the FBI office going down to the basement to see that they're seizing all of Mulder's files because they're investigating him. And let's see how I can put it. So she closed on the elevator doors. We're in 48 frames per second, opening to reveal Scully. The camera's pulling with her as she rounds into the hallway, leading into Mulder's office. And then as she turns into Mulder's office, we slam back to real time, 24 frames per second. So I can picture that in my head. Oh, yeah, that's when they slowed it down. It's slow-mo for dramatic effect. And that's how they did it. And so it shows that it was like intentional as of the writing of the script, not just something they came up with and later in the process. Yeah. And like I said, I noticed that a lot in this season.
Gives it that contemplative feel, doesn't it, in Within?
Yeah.
So, I suppose we don't see that much slow-mo in the X-Files before this. I'm sure there must be isolated occasions, but it's very notable in this two-parter, isn't it? So.
Yeah.
Well, we see it a lot in All Things. They use, I'm sure that's exactly this. It's what they've done in All Things.
Okay. And I don't remember seeing the notation in the script, but that, because the writer and director was the same person, maybe she didn't need to make the notation. She had it in her mind.
So great. What's next?
Okay, here's a description I really liked. And it's one of the things I love looking at in scripts is how the scene is set with words that we're just going to see, we're not going to hear. So it's not dialogue, it's just telling the actors and director what they want. And this is the scene when Scully goes to Mulder's apartment after her computer was stolen and he's just missing. And I'll just read this because it's so beautiful. Angle on Scully out the door. Scully stands looking for several moments, then steps forward into the doorway, looking around the room, making us wonder what secret narrative is running through her mind. I love that. Then she steps into the room and moves to the bed to pick up one of Mulder's wrinkled shirts. Close on Scully, touching the shirt, as if making or trying to make a connection with Mulder himself. Another thing, it's just, she's not just picking it up because it's there. It's like she's trying to reach out to him. Oh, I love that. It's an uncharacteristic gesture for her. Her eyes going now to Mulder's unmade bed, staring at it. Then close on Mulder's bed, his pillow, and Scully lies down into frame on her stomach, lying her head gently on one of the pillows, still holding the wrinkled shirt in her hands, her face half buried in the pillow. The camera pushes slowly in on her face, and we're wondering exactly what is the source of the clear melancholy. I wasn't wondering. I knew why she's wondering at all.
Are we wondering?
We knew that already. But anyway, I really loved that description. I thought that was nice.
It's really nice. It made me think when that whole line, and it's kind of underlined, it looks like, making us wonder what secret narrative is running through her mind. It was very like the enigmatic Dr. Scully. You know what I mean? Like, she's so mysterious. I love it.
Yeah. And it could be so many things she's remembering or just worrying or,
trying to put it together.
Right.
I definitely had that feeling, particularly in Permanum, about wondering exactly what she's thinking. And I think these kinds of scenes do encourage that. So yeah, you're right. It's a very nice description. Absolutely. Okay. Gibson praise.
Okay. This is so silly. So we know Gibson praise. They've just decided they needed to focus their investigation there. That they think that's where they might find Mulder. And this is a deleted scene that sort of brings him into the picture. And to my mind, it's very corny. There's a teacher picking up breakfast at a fast food restaurant, and the person taking the order comments, 34 breakfast, you're going to need a hand with that. And the teacher says, sure, looks like I am. And they look to the front door, and in walks Gibson praise. And he puts out his hand to help, and the teacher says, Gibson praise, you're a wonder. Sometimes I think that kid can read my mind.
But
yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
So I didn't hurt the episode to lose that.
No, not at all. And I think when the script says Gibson praise is coming in with a smile on his face, putting his hands out to help, I feel like whatever cuteness that boy had in season 5 kind of evaporated by season 8.
Yeah.
And I can't see that working quite as well. Not to be too mean, but
I mean,
just the way he aged it.
Not really how Gibson usually presents himself, like, with his hands outstretched to help people. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, and it sort of contrasts with how they would use him later in Without. It's like he wasn't this smiley little puppet, you know.
Okay.
But anyway, I just thought that was really corny.
Cool.
All right. And the next one we have is it's a description of Doggett in the script at the beginning of Act 4, and I really loved this one. It says, close on John Doggett, he's sitting in silence, looking off camera, reading something. As the camera circles him, we get a chance to study John Doggett up close for the first time. His steely, old-line masculinity. He has a gravity, a magnetism that makes good men want to do better. No bullshit intensity and intelligence that commands allegiance. I'm glad they put that in there. And I'm glad they put it towards at the end, because we weren't meant to really start liking him until the end of that episode. So that was a good description, I thought. And I think Robert Patrick does that well.
Yeah, I get a lot of that description from the character himself, so I do like that. Old line, does that just mean old fashioned? That's how it sort of reads.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's
thinking about that. What does that mean?
Old line masculinity, because it's definitely not like
kind of like old school, I guess.
I think it's old school rather than like I was sort of thinking of aristocracy, American style, but I don't think that's at all what they're talking about. I think it's more he's an old-fashioned kind of guy. He's got these old values that maybe other people are letting go of, but he's still got them. Yeah.
Well, I think I can definitely get that from him. Cool.
Yeah.
This next one's intriguing. The fact that apparently Within and Without had the title second pilot at one point.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting, and this was from the Pink revision, so that's pretty far ahead, and it still said second pilot. And it was going to start with a Gibson Praise voiceover, which I can't imagine. I can't imagine a Gibson Praise voiceover.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I really love how Without started, and I'm glad that they didn't do that. So and then and they didn't know how they were going to do it, because this just keeps saying Gibson Praise voiceover to be written.
Oh, to be written.
Right.
Do you think the second pilot thing, that makes me wonder whether that's just kind of a placeholder? Obviously, it indicates how they're kind of thinking of these episodes. But was it just like title to be decided effectively? Do you know what I mean? We'll call it second pilot for now.
I have lots and lots of scripts that just say untitled because they haven't come up with a title yet. So the fact that they put second pilot seems like maybe they were actually considering it as a title. Otherwise, they'd have just put untitled. And maybe they really were thinking, okay, this is a different show now because it's not Mulder and Scully. Although season 8 definitely relied on the original dynamic a lot more than season 9 would have.
But it shows you that they're thinking of that as a bigger change than, say, season 6 was moving to LA. It shows you that they do sort of conceptualize it as a new show in some ways, even though it's leaning on Gibson Praise and whoever, you know. It's very interesting, I think.
And a Gibson Praise voiceover, it feels very like the struggles to me, you know, like that. I almost wish I could have seen that. I don't know what he would have said, but about whatever his struggle was, I guess, probably. But like that's like a very My Struggle vibe to me. I don't know why. Yeah,
I think maybe Chris Carter had that in mind and wanted to always do that, maybe, and that's why we ended up with the struggles.
Kept that in his pocket for like decades.
It would have been interesting to hear how Gibson ended up where he did.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was time for it in the episode. It's most likely the. Okay, and then we get a description of Scully in Without. Oh, and here you can see it says untitled rather than second pilot. But
interesting.
Okay, so this is this was right after. It's right at the beginning of the episode where Mulder had fallen off the cliff, and that's what Doggett's telling her. But then he ran away and trying to figure out what it was. And Doggett says, "I know who it was up there, and it was Fox Mulder." Scully answers, "I'm sure it looked like him, and you have every reason to believe it was him, but it wasn't Mulder. and then here's the description. Scully has to gather herself for what she's going to say next because she's about to cross a line she never imagined crossing. And she says, I told you I've seen things I can't explain. Well, I've seen what looks like a man transform into another man. So I really like that they're really showing that Scully is now moving into Mulder's space because he's not there, that she's starting on this journey where she's going to try to be the believer.
Yeah. Does that register on? It's been a while since I've seen Without. Do we get a moment where we see her sort of gather herself in the way that's described there?
I think we do. I think there's at least a pause, definitely, and maybe is Skinner standing there? Maybe.
Yeah, I think he's
still
down
there,
with
and
her.
she kind of like looks at him maybe and is like deciding. I guess
that's what it is. There's like this look between Skinner and Scully, and she's like, I can't believe I'm saying this. Yeah. So I think it's definitely good. It's there. Yeah.
Nice moment. Okay, so Patience.
Moving into Patience.
Favorite human bat episode.
This is, I have to admit, this is probably my least favorite of the season. I don't. And
least favorite script or episode?
No, of the episode. And what I wrote in my notes here was, I don't remember this episode well enough to remember why I marked this part as the script as significant.
Okay. Oh my.
And I did not go back and rewatch it, but I do. So what happened is, in the script, they originally had, they found out the newspaper clippings about this Batman and the killings that happened however many years ago. And the script had this bat creature actually arrested and tried and convicted and sentenced to prison and sent to prison. And I don't think that's not in the episode, right? They never actually captured it, because that seems like, it's like the Fluke Man. What do you do with that?
That's exactly what I was thinking. What do you do with a Major Mulder? Put him in a zoo.
Right. So they cut out that aspect. But then there are other scenes where Scully and Doggett actually went to the prison to find him. And the warden, this is just so appalling. He got to the prison. He's like, well, I just heard rumors that he was like a bat, but he's just locked in this. And every once in a while we'd see rat bones, so we must be eating. Like,
what?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh man.
But so they go there and they're looking and this also reminded me of Eve, because it's all kept dark and no one wants to go in there, and so they're looking in the corners they're trying to find this Batman, and like, oh look, he's escaped. Like, this is supposed to be a prison. Okay, no.
That they imprisoned it and then never looked again.
Right. They just
they were like, I guess he's eating.
We find rat bones in the corner, but no one has ever seen him out of that window.
So weird. I'm glad that this was not part of this episode.
Yeah, this sounds really poor. This sounds. Yeah. The episode is better without this. That's the end, I think.
Yeah. This might have been more entertaining to me, because the reason I don't like Patience, I just find it really dull. It's like I don't have the patience to watch it, but so maybe this would have been more entertaining. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I have.
Maybe, definitely, because it kind of veers into camp a little bit, I think, that episode, and this would have taken it all the way there for sure.
All the way.
So maybe it would have upped the entertainment factor somewhat.
So in the script that you have put here, Kathy, John Doggett says he has to eat, and the warden says not prison food. What? Oh no. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. I can't believe
that whole
for him to be serving
there is terrible.
Oh
my god.
If he's serving 5 life sentences, he's obviously been to court and all of that. Which
that's what is so
could have seen that
like,
in the episode.
With the Eves, they've never been convicted. They're just locked up, right? But it's actually suggesting that he was tried and convicted, and he's a bat, but we had him in court. We did it the right way.
The warden says a lot of crazy stuff in this.
Yeah.
In this script section. Everyone should see. He says a lot of things. He says, I looked in the cell and it was empty. Then someone pointed him out, tucked up in the high window in this rectangle. Yeah, big.
I think it's probably yay big, is it? Yay big.
Yay big? Yay big. You think so? Okay, he's like, like motioning. Okay,
yeah.
Sure. And that's how he stays for years.
For years.
Oh boy, I don't think they could have pulled that off.
Also, the fact that the bat has disappeared just when Scully and Doggett are there to
Right.
see.
Well, he could have been gone for a long time, right?
They
Well,
were.
like,
By the
obviously
sounds of it, yeah.
because he was committing all this. He killed the Undertaker and his wife, right?
Oh, it just goes on and on. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's a big long scene.
Yeah.
Oh, so wait, so hang on. This isn't the very end of the episode then. This is, where does this come in?
This is the middle of it. It's
Right.
Where they have just found the newspaper clipping about the previous deaths. And then that's when he says, oh yeah, look, that he was actually convicted. And then they go to the prison. So it's like, yeah.
Scully's like looking under the bed for it. I mean, guys, this is brilliant.
We need to know if this was actually filmed.
I hope so.
That would
somewhere.
be amazing.
Oh,
That's
boy.
one thing I would love, is to find all the deleted scenes that were actually filmed, all the other takes, all the dailies from every like. I guess I could keep watching for the rest of my life, and I'd never see all the dailies. But I would love to.
All the stuff they just couldn't face putting on the DVD. Like, this is so bad, we can't even put it as a
just
DVD.
like tossed it. Oh man, I hope this exists somewhere.
Yeah.
I hope they at least have like a table read of this or something, because it's just having a hard time imagining any of this making it.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining this making it to the final script, final version of the script. Trying to see which one I have here. Oh, this is production draft. So this is the very first version.
Okay.
It's unrevised, so it's just Chris Carter's brain just spilling out on the page. So I would be super surprised if that was ever filmed.
I would like to see them put that bat thing on trial, though. I would watch that episode for sure.
Yeah.
Do a trial scene, all these unbelievable trial scenes from the X-Files, starting with
oh my gosh, it would be brilliant.
Mulder and Young at Heart, like, yelling at him from the witness stand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like the one they do that. They do one in Pusher too, right? Where they've got Robert Modell on the stand.
The preliminary hearing. Yeah.
What
That's
a
just
useless. Yeah.
It's not a courtroom scene, but I love the thing in Tombs where it's like a hearing or something, isn't it? Where Mulder goes in with like the least persuasive. You know, he could have thought about how am I going to reach these people. Like,
this is an abnormal human creature. Like, okay, yeah, that's persuasive, Mulder.
But the bat would have been much more. I mean,
like why is he hanging upside down? But
right.
Don't worry about it. Just go with it.
Has some behavior stuff happening. Like, I don't know.
What would have been even funnier is if the bat represented himself in court. We saw all that.
And he's like hanging from the courtroom ceiling though the whole time. Like, he's not even like at the table.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. It's a lot.
Stuff.
There's a lot happening there in that script.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we should move swiftly on.
Okay. Let's move on to, this is some deleted lines from Scully's phone call. This is Roadrunners.
Yep.
So at the beginning, when Scully's out in the desert and she calls Doggett from a payphone, the conversation was a little different originally in the script. And do we want to try to act this one out?
Yes. Now, Cortlan, do you want to be Scully or Doggett?
I definitely want to be Scully.
Okay.
I want to hear your best John Doggett. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So how are we going to do this, Cathy? Are you going to read us into the...
I'll read the directions and then you do the dialogue. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll try.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interior Mulder's office day, the desk phone rings. A hand grabs it, brings it to the ear of John Doggett. He's seated at Mulder's desk, paperwork strewn in front of him.
X-Files.
Exterior Desert Road day, Scully is in a phone booth. The receiver to her ear. We're extreme low angle to catch the creaky Roadrunner bus sign overhead, reminding us where we are. Scully hesitates.
How about just Doggett?
Okay, Doggett it is.
You're not using Mulder's desk, are you?
Doggett casually leans back, puts his feet up on it into foreground.
Perish the thought. You coming in today?
If it turns into something more, I'll call.
Promise?
Yeah, I promise.
Good, because there's not much for me to do here but leave big coffee rings on Mulder's desk. I know how you'd hate that. Okay.
And scene. I just love that.
That's pretty snippy.
It is. It's very confrontational, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Scully really trying to put him in his place, and he's not having any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I could see Robert Patrick playing that less confrontationally, though, if it comes across humorously.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to look here. There's not much here on the page to sort of say that it would be that way, is there?
And I think for what I remember of this episode, he's very deferential, right? That's the attitude I get from him. So even if this dialogue was in there, I think he would just do it. He would take it lightly. I
think it would sound much more teasing, probably. At least his part would sound much more teasing than hers would, probably.
I think it's interesting that she's correcting him from, don't answer the phone, X-Files.
Oh, don't use the one desk in the room.
Just want to take this opportunity to send a message out to Sarah Blair that Sarah, you should rewatch Roadrunners and like it this time, please.
Clearly, I think it's just if it had this dialogue, she'd be all in.
Oh yeah, if you knew all this stuff about the script, Sarah, you'd love this episode for sure.
Okay, should we move on to the next part? Okay, so and this is a description of Scully's movement in the script. She's at the gas station, that has no gas, and it says, "We steady cam ahead of Scully as she walks fast, leaves the man behind on his porch. She touches a hand to her stomach, an unconscious gesture, one protective of her unborn child. If only one viewer in 100 gets it, fine." I really loved that. I loved knowing that they're going to put this detail in, and it's a great detail, and it's okay if you don't get it, but those who get it, we're here for you. It's like, I really love that.
And that's how it comes across on screen, is it? She does the movement. And,
yeah, it's just very subtle. I mean, it's like she's not thinking about it. It just, her hand lands there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That is nice, yeah.
Do we think only one viewer in 100 got it, though? It felt, I don't know, maybe that's just me, though. Like, when I watched it the first time, I remember getting it immediately. So.
Yeah. Well, they think we don't know who the father is, so. I mean.
That's true. I guess we were supposed to be wondering.
Yeah, we're supposed to be wondering all the way up until the last minute, yeah.
I feel like a lot of male viewers wouldn't make that link.
Okay.
I'm not saying necessarily. I just think it wouldn't cross our minds as readily.
Okay.
I'm not sure what proportion, but
also maybe at the time. I mean, it just seems like they were really underestimating the audience a little bit, but maybe at the time they were not. I don't know.
And possibly also because it's, one a week.
True. Yeah.
True. Whereas now we watch it. Well, I watch it every day. You can binge it, and you've got all the story points in your head, and this is just the first reminder in this episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and definitely you could watch all of Roadrunners and not know until she's like screaming it, at the crazy people. So
true.
Yeah. I suppose if you started watching Roadrunners because somebody told you that the previous episode had a human bat that had served 5 life sentences and represented itself in court, and you wouldn't know the context.
Magic. Okay.
Very good.
Still would have watched. Great.
Okay, now this is the scene that really would have gotten Sarah hooked, I think.
Yes.
All right. So this is a scene setting description in the script that I love, and I've been listening to Better Call Saul Insider podcast like every day, and so Vince Gilligan's voice is always in my head at the moment. So when I read this, I hear it in his voice, which is pretty funny. But it's okay. I'll just read it. It's to the dismay of millions of viewers eating Sunday dinner in front of the TV, Scully carefully works the tweezers upward into the wound. Something can be seen squirming just beneath Hank's flesh. After a few attempts, the tweezers grab tight. Scully's hand withdraws them, tugging into view the tail of what can best be described as a squirming, sickly yellow slug. It thins as it stretches taut, fighting for purchase. Scully pulls and pulls. Finally, the slug breaks. 2-inch-long piece remains in the tweezers, while underneath Hank's skin, the rest of the creature ripples up his spine and disappears. I just love that to this
It is
millions of viewers.
Just disgusting. Like, it's so gross. It's great.
Sunday dinner in front of the TV. I really like that. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on just right after this. There's a part that definitely, so all of that is in this scene that as we see it on the final episode. But the next part, I think they deleted it because it was just a bit too gross. So she's just pulled out this piece, 2-inch long piece that remains in the tweezers. The piece of yellow slug gets dropped into frame on the floor. Before it has a chance to wriggle away, Scully's shoe slams down on it in frame, crushing it flat off her gunshot loud stomp. Sorry, that to me would just be too gross. I don't mind seeing it wiggle, but I don't want to see her squash it.
This is making me have so many questions about the slug, though. Because the tiny piece of it was going to wiggle away. Was it going to grow a whole second Jesus slug? There were going to be 2. There could have been 2 of these. In this town. Then what would they have done? Because it seems like they were having a hard enough time with the one.
Just the one, yeah.
I mean, I have so many questions. Can it regenerate? Can it regenerate from this tiny 2-inch piece? I don't know.
Well, at least it's gonna, I don't know. Is it implying that it's going to regenerate? It can move. It can wriggle.
Wiggle away. Like, it's trying to escape.
Maybe it's
still.
Just reflex, though. Or, you know,
like a headless chicken. Carries on for a little bit. That kind of thing. I don't know.
She just doesn't want to risk it, so she's going to stomp on it. That's
fair. I would want to stomp on it, too. Or light it on fire or something. I don't know.
I would have liked to see the stomp, I think.
You think so?
Maybe.
I would like to see it. That's when I would like to know if they actually shot it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did. And they just needed to shorten the scene or something.
Yeah, that sounds plausible, doesn't it? Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't work, like, visually.
Yeah, it didn't come off like they planned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this next one is it capital letters?
Okay, so this, it's sort of hard to say this rather than see it in writing, but Vince Gilligan apparently has a way of describing things. And this one, the script says, I think it's after they pull the slug out of Hank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, they pull it out of Hank, and a squirming yellow slug as big as a catfish. It was in his spine. It's now as big as a catfish, but cradling it in her 2 bloody hands like a baby, she smiles up at Scully. And then it says, Scully is about to lose it in capital letters. And then that in capital letters is in the script. And what I love about that is it's clearly just his style of conveying, emphasis, how much she's going to lose it. But what I loved is in the script for Talitha Kumi, way back when, Chris Carter wrote, and this is a quote, Mulder is, to quote Vince Gilligan, uppercase pissed. So apparently he's really known for that, and he's kept it up. That if he wants to really stress something, he'll say in capital letters or uppercase. So I thought that was fun.
Well, that would be an interesting one to trace then, wouldn't it? Because if Carter's saying that for Talitha Kumi, Gilligan's only written a couple of X-Files scripts by now.
Yeah. I'll have to look for that. I think I did look for something like that in Pusher's script. But keep in mind, he's also in the writer's room. So even if it's not a script he wrote, it's probably his way of describing things that he's really known for.
Or he might have thrown out the phrase uppercase pissed at one point in one of the discussions.
I was going to say, does he say it out loud? Like when they're talking, he must, right? Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. But I liked knowing that about him. Yeah. All right. So, okay. At the end of Roadrunners, this is when Doggett is picking Scully up from the hospital, and, he's scolding her, and she says, I won't do it again. And he says, I know you're uncomfortable with me. I don't hold it against you. And Scully takes a beat and says, I'm uncomfortable with me. Mulder's not here and his work needs to go on, but I don't know if I'm up to it. She looks down at herself, finds her hands rest atop her stomach again. She thinks about it, starts to make a confession, and then she just changes her mind and says, I'm sorry. So that would have been, so we don't have any of that exchange in the final episode, but I kind of liked it.
I do too. I kind of wish that line from Scully about like not knowing if she's up to it I kind of wish that was in. I feel like it would have been a good stepping stone.
Yeah.
Like touch point.
Yeah.
At this point in the season.
I agree, because that's clearly what they're doing with. She has a whole arc in this. That's why I love season 8 so much. Is like this arc that you can see traced, even from All Things. You can just trace it all the way through. And that would be. You're right. It would have been a nice touchstone for her.
Yeah, because how many episodes are between Roadrunners and Bad Law? Because that's when she says this kind of right.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to have like a few, because it's at least 2 or 3, right? More than that, maybe.
More than that.
Remember.
Few more than that,
yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it would have been a nice little touch.
Yeah, just a little bit to just remind the viewers where we're going, where she is, where she's going. Yeah.
So what do we think? Do we think that scene was just shortened? And maybe they filmed this and just trimmed this, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
But it was just edited out in post-production.
Because it does end quite abruptly, thinking about it, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
exchange in the final scene of Roadrunners kind of...
Yeah, like she promises she won't do it again, and they just sort of stare at each other, and then that's it.
Which I quite like, that sort of effect you get from that abruptness.
Does he have that? Does he have that same kind of? Don't they have that same kind of conversation that they had before, where he's like, "Why are they keeping you so long?" or whatever. Does he say that in this one too?
Is that this one, or is that just in Without?
I can't remember.
I think it's just in Without. Because at the end of Roadrunners, they're talking about the cult members.
Right.
Right. And then.
Okay. You're right.
Tells her this, you should never do this without me again. And that's sort of it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and so Roadrunners is one of the scripts I bought, the production use scripts, and what I can't. There's no way to show this on a podcast, but I'm going to talk about it. One of the things I got with this script was all the storyboards, and so there's like drawings of each scene that they want to shoot, and it's so cool. It's really such a cool thing to have.
These pictures are pretty gross.
I know, I picked the gross ones for you.
But yeah.
The tweezer pulling
pulling out the tail. Yeah.
And there's one where you can the gaping wound in the back. I didn't choose that one for you, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention those because it's really cool.
That
it feels
really
like the kind
cool,
of thing. Is there a way to like tweet these out when the episode goes live or something? That would be
I
a
can
fun
do
way
that. I can choose some and tweet them. Yeah.
Yeah, they are interesting to look at for sure.
Yeah.
So how often do you get scripts that have these kind of storyboards in?
Several of the ones I got, the production used ones I got, had either storyboards or shooting schedules or like funny things that like they'll create a fake cover for the script to put on the shooting schedule cover, and they're just really funny. So a lot of the ones I got that were actually production used, they were meaning from someone who was on set who had to use the script as work, include those. But mostly when I buy a script, it's just the script. So I have probably 20 with these kind of extras. They're just really fun to see.
Okay. So that's Roadrunners again, Sarah. Do a rewatch if you're listening.
I'll send her the storyboards. She'll change her mind for sure.
If that doesn't work, storyboard or script read or something.
Oh my gosh.
We'll never stop. We'll never stop there.
Okay.
Right, so Invocation next.
Invocation. Right? And this one I have the production drafts, which is the first version written by the writer. And it includes a deleted scene, although it doesn't really include the scene. It includes the description of what the scene will be, and then they ended up not using it. But I thought it was really interesting just for what they were planning to put, so I'll read that here. They're outside the Underwood house. Scully and Doggett exit, argue merits of the psychic's involvement. Scully presses Doggett, who admits that from the beginning this case has been eerily like a waking nightmare he's had for years. And something else, that Doggett has a son himself, a boy that he's lost custody of and contact with. So they did not put that scene in, and then I ended up changing Doggett's story. That's not how we come to know what happened. But I thought that was interesting that this is where they thought they were going to go before they actually wrote it.
Fascinating to see just how provisional it is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like to be written later.
Yeah. And there are scripts like this one. It was more interesting to me to see this than to see the scripted version, because I can watch that. But then there are other episodes where I have a script that I really, really love a scene, and I want to read how it was written, and it says TBW. No. This was fine. I thought it was more interesting to see the pre version than the post.
That's really interesting how they ultimately changed Doggett's backstory.
Yeah.
Like,
or
this version
didn't know
is
what
like,
it was going to be yet.
Yeah, this version makes it much more like flawed, maybe. I don't know, like, I mean, because if you lost custody and contact, like that's a lot of, you know what I mean? I don't know, there's like a lot more drama, like personal drama, I guess.
It's
as opposed to like
drama,
tragedy.
But not tragedy.
Yeah.
And
it makes a really different tone.
It would make it more distinct from Mulder's experience with Samantha as well, wouldn't it? Because there was sometimes the criticism that it was too samey, that you had a new lead character whose sister in Mulder's case, child in Mulder's case. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this is quite a different thing altogether, isn't it?
This also, though, might have been more similar to what eventually happens to Scully. I mean, she's not like she gives up custody of her son and then has no contact. I don't know. It's just really, it's really interesting. I mean, obviously they did a great job with his backstory, but interesting to think about.
Yeah. This whole thing about how provisional it is reminds me of a story. I think Darren Morgan told this on, I think it was on Kumail Nanjiani's podcast when he did an interview on there, but about how Glenn Morgan taught him a really good trick, which was like, if you get to a part where you're stuck when you're doing the little cards they would do to plot out the story, just write something very provisional and then move on. Don't just agonize over the details until it's perfect, get something down. So that's kind of what it made me think of when I saw this.
Yeah.
Just whatever you're currently thinking and then go. Keep going.
Yep.
I think the Darren Morgan examples from Humbug, it's something like the sheriff is suspicious, then he's not. Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Okay. Red Rum.
Yeah. Red Rum. Okay. And this was actually in the episode, but I thought it was interesting. I would never have picked up on it if I hadn't read the script. When they're in the courtroom, it's at the beginning, but it really is at the end. Yeah, because Red Rum's backward. Anyway, when the judge calls the case in the courtroom, the case number is 8ABX03, and that's the production number of the episode. So I thought that was a really fun touch.
Yeah.
Nice little Easter egg, yeah.
And,
yeah, as you've pointed out on the thing we're looking at here, episodes aired out of order in terms of production cycle, aren't they? So this and more so in season 8 than other seasons, just because of, I think, Duchovny's availability. That was my assumption too.
Yeah.
And also, wasn't Gillian Anderson having a little bit of time off at points in season 8? Because there's the odd episode where she barely appears, isn't there?
That's right. Yeah. Like she's not in Via Negativa much. All right, moving on to the gift. This is another one. I have the production use script, and this is the person who had it was in visual effects department. And this is the scene where the I forget his name now, the monster, some soul eater had just devoured and is regurgitating a Mrs. Hanger Mule. And so it describes it, what we're supposed to see. And it says we hear retching, the creature hunched over on all fours, expelling from his mouth wet, slimy dough. It's thick and whitish, but shot through with veins.
Ew.
The dough gloops onto the floor where the camera finds a pattern taking form, what looks like 2 human legs. But what I loved about this is the note of the person who had the script just circled it and wrote, monster throw up.
In capitals,
This is what he's going to have to create, is some monster throw up.
Right. Really boiled it down to the essentials here.
Yeah.
The script is very specific.
It is, yeah. And I rewatched it after reading the script. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. They gave exactly what Frank wanted, so yuck. And then another note after Doggett's been, regurgitated and comes back to life, he's naked on the floor, coated in same whitish slime we found on Marie Hangamule, and the note is slimy Doggett.
Slimy Doggett.
It's funny.
Yikes.
And then one more thing from the gift, I had the shooting schedule for the entire episode, and so in the shooting schedule they have like little names for the scene, just a brief description of what's happening, and then they include who's got to be there and what effects they'll need and all that. And this one here is Naked Mulder Waits for Creature. And as I was reading this, I laughed because I was thinking, okay, they probably told David, well, all right, you can come back for only just a limited number, but you're going to be naked. So,
right.
Because he's naked and within and without. Also,
right.
It's like, okay, half the episodes that he's just barely appears in, he's got to be naked. So,
and not even naked in a fun way, really.
Right.
For him,
No, just the chair and within and without. That just looks horrible.
Just in the terrible ways, terrible ways.
But he does get a nude suit for Mulder in this.
Yeah, costume.
Okay, it says costume is nude suit for Mulder.
Maybe they were thinking to themselves, well, we have to make a nude suit for the terrible alien chair anyway, so like we'll just keep using the same costume for Mulder every time he's here.
I do want to know what exactly this nude suit looks like. I would like to know.
Yeah, we can find out.
We need to know if that's in the X-Files preservation collections.
Oh, God.
Is there a nude suit? Just like that's terrible.
Moving on.
Yep.
All right, so
all right, we're going to talk continuity, aren't we? So,
yeah, a little bit. This was very interesting to me. I have the first draft of Permanum, and the script very clearly sets the flashback scenes at a year earlier. This is, we've leapt back in time, Scully and wardrobe from this year, hair slightly different, whatever will sell the time rewind, which I like that. But it says a year earlier. And every time we do a flashback, it says a year earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They did not keep that. They did not communicate that in the final episode. As we see it on screen, there's nothing identifying when these flashbacks were.
No.
So
I like it better without
I do
identifying
too.
them.
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't matter anyway, really, because we don't. That's the other thing, right? About the way time has worked from season 7 to season 8 is we don't know what time of year it is anyway.
No,
it's unclear. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Unless she was pregnant
for 14 months, it's
right.
So
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just, let's just enjoy it as a TV show.
You know how hard I find that, but
yeah. Oh no, I do
agree. I do think that this particular note makes almost no difference to trying to determine what's happening.
But hang on, so in the episode, I'm trying to remember what we talked about on the Permanum episode, but didn't we think some of them were more than a year?
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
Or did we? I can't remember. I thought some of
we
them
talked about the possibility of that because in particular the elevator. Yeah. Seems like it has to be, I don't know, close. It has to be more than a year. I guess.
There is one scene that we see on screen. There's an email from Dr. Parente on Scully's emails that is from around the time of the Unnatural. And that's the closest we get to identifying when she would have started IVF. Yeah. But I don't remember. I know when I was listening to Permanum, I remember Carl had some suggestion that seemed to work really well for me.
Well, I was just saying that I felt a lot of it was subjective from Scully's point of view because of the way you go into the flashbacks and out of them. The fact that when she walks into the elevator, it kind of starts within the same shot, doesn't it? The camera pans around to Mulder at the door. I wasn't saying like definitively this is what's going on. I was just saying I think it's one way to read it is that these are things she's playing back in her mind. So if there's some fuzziness around dates and things, maybe you could chalk it up to that.
I like that.
And I think the fact that it doesn't say on the screen 1 year later makes it easier to
do
take it that way.
Yeah, if you think about it from Scully's point of view, these are the important things that she's remembering, not necessarily like so she could combine several conversations.
She could conflate things, that's it. That's
honestly, seeing the note and then knowing that they took it out or just opted not to include it makes me think a little bit better of them. In that, like, it makes me think they realized this is a problem that they could not fix. That they had like written themselves into a strange corner that there was no clear way out of.
Yeah.
So, and they were like, just toss it all. Just don't tell them. Like, Yeah. And like, at least they thought about it. Because with that in my mind, I was like, okay, well.
Yeah, I agree.
At least they had this thought and they were like, there's no clear way to fix this and get across all the information that they needed to get across. Like, they had to have that elevator scene or people wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they had to remind the viewers somehow about things we learned in Emily because they might not have been there for that. So,
and sometimes they kind of have to crowbar that stuff in.
Yeah.
Or they would have felt they had to anyway. Okay, so some deleted dialogue, isn't it?
Yeah. You guys want to act this one out?
Okay. All right. So,
okay.
My Mulder is going to be very similar to my Doggett performance.
My Scully is going to be nothing like Scully. Okay. It starts with Scully. So if you're trying to politely say no, it's okay. I understand.
That's not what I'm saying. I want to do this, Scully, for so many reasons, but what I'm not sure of is what happens then.
Scully is surprised on one hand, relieved, but also confused.
I mean, I know what happens, but what about between me and you? What about work? The X-Files?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it really. I'm assuming I would take a leave of absence.
As strange as it may sound, I just don't want this to come between us in any way.
I understand.
They stand awkwardly for a moment, unclear where that puts them.
But the answer is yes.
I like this. I do. I can see why they would leave it out. It's just, it lengthens the scene and doesn't really give us anything, but it's kind of nice to see them talking about where this would lead them. Where this puts them in their partnership.
Yeah. I like that there's a little clarification in there, like, but I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think we get it.
I think so too. I think it communicates this stuff implicitly. So it's like you say, Cathy, nice to see, I think, but not essential ultimately. Yeah, I like it.
It's the kind of thing I would want if I'm reading a novel.
Yeah.
But if I'm seeing it on screen, I can get it from their expressions and their actions.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one more thing in Pernanum, during Scully's ultrasound, the doctor tells her she's having a girl. I don't know if they ever meant it to be that, or if that was supposed to be throwing us or her off track. But it looks to me like it's a little girl, is what the doctor said. So interesting stuff.
I wonder what the thinking is here. I wonder if, I don't know.
Maybe there was more plan later to be like, no, now it's a boy, and then it's like someone is lying. Like,
yeah, that's what I wondered. Yeah. Because I can tell you it's not, they don't touch on that again in the script.
Right. Well, maybe they tossed it and were like, it's better to just say nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do have to, I wonder what they were thinking. Were they really thinking Scully was going to have a girl?
Yeah.
And then it would be abducted like Samantha, and like,
right?
You could see that
probably
thought process happening.
I could totally see that. Yeah. That also
Yeah.
But I could also see them saying, okay, well, if Scully believes it's a girl and has been told it's a girl, and then later finds out no, from a different doctor, right? Like, no, it's a boy. Then like, there's more like doubt maybe about what the doctors are doing and
like,
saying.
Yeah, some's been lying to her.
Yeah. Like, so I could also see that, but unnecessary. I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, nice. So this is an interesting one, I think, but this is not happening.
I like it. Yeah. So this is the first time we meet Monica Reyes, and we have her line here. Oh, I have my own thoughts. It's just what we think happened and what actually happened aren't always the same, but not altogether insignificant either. And then this description. Agent Reyes's manner is off the cuff, Columbo-like, disarming but not dippy, confident, not condescending. We like her right away.
I think, yeah.
I like that. I've never thought of her as Columbo, like, ever.
No.
Ever.
And I think there is an argument that she is actually quite dippy. So the confident thing I get.
Yeah.
Very confident.
Do we like her right away? I think that's an open question.
I don't remember liking her right away.
I thought, what the heck is she saying to Scully? What is she saying?
I remember liking her more by the end of the episode than I did right away. But Definitely. I don't know if I remember liking her right away.
No.
They wanted us to.
They sure did.
Yeah.
I think there are still some fans who don't like her to this day, aren't there? So,
I think there are lots, yeah. It's okay.
You don't like Reyes, really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's too bad.
Definitely at the time, during season 9, that was the case, wasn't it?
Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah.
I think she's definitely been favourably reappraised these days, which is good.
That's true. Yeah, she has definitely moved up in people's esteem.
Which is interesting because, like, the characterization gets worse, doesn't it? In the revival.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, the revival does not do her any favors.
I think it has more to do with Anna Bithkish herself.
I think that's a lot of it, and the fact that she does events about the X-Files and conventions, and I think a lot of it is that, actually. Yeah.
We'll take it.
Also, the fact that time has passed and it's not a big deal now that season 9 had new characters, and
I think the benefit of time. I think the benefit of time makes all of it better. Like, all of the drama part of it is less important, so it's easier. It's easier to like season 9 because the drama part is, further away.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel about the brain disease. Like, at first, I really struggled with it. Well, Mulder would have told Scully, and how could he have had this all along? And I was really angry. Then I realized, okay, but they took it away, so I don't have to worry about that anymore.
It turns out not to have mattered at all.
It didn't matter at all, so why am I getting worked up about it?
Yeah. Well, that's a good attitude to have, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It does. See, I want to enjoy the show, and I'm always looking for ways to enjoy the show. And if I'm getting angry about Diana Fowley or about a brain disease, then I'm not going to enjoy it as much as if I just make my peace with it.
All right.
Okay. So 3 words. I've got a whole manifesto on here. And this is really just I don't intend to read all of this. Don't worry. But this is my personal reaction to 3 words. I know that this episode is criticized for Mulder, how Mulder acts, how he's depicted. And people say he's abrupt and he's rude and he's out of character. He's such a jerk. Or they say that the episode fails to acknowledge his PTSD. All right. So I have always thought that his behavior, what we're actually seeing on screen, was deliberately included to show that he's affected by trauma. And so they never sat him down and said, Mulder, I know that you're suffering PTSD, or they never had him go to a therapist, which, they didn't have enough time with him to do. And they barely did with Scully. But I've always thought that it was very deliberately addressed through what we're seeing on screen. So when I got the script, that's the first thing I looked for, is to see how they handled it in the script. And it does include specific behavior to demonstrate all these marks of trauma. We've got flashbacks. We've got his flat affect. We've got all these things that are deliberately put in there. But then, so I sort of felt vindicated as I was reading the script. But then, if people aren't getting that from watching the episode, then maybe the script or the acting it wasn't good enough. But in my mind, it just wasn't ignored. And so I just put in a lot of examples here that I found in the script that proved me right.
Yeah.
You can argue with me if you want, but that's what I liked about it.
Well, I don't know if Cortlan wants to argue. I think on the podcast episode, I said something similar. I said his behavior was consistent with something like PTSD because he's re-experiencing through flashbacks, because he's irritable. I think it's an interesting point that you raise about whether it's clear enough for the viewer. And if you think back to 2001, was there the same level of awareness about PTSD then as there is now? Maybe not. So maybe there is an argument that it is too implicit, whilst also being his behavior is consistent with.
I think if someone's going to watch it once, what's going to stand out to them is Mulder's being a real jerk. And if you only watch it once and you think, oh, Mulder's a jerk, then you're going to skip that, and the rest of the time, whenever you watch the series again, the only thing that's going to be in your mind about this episode is, boy, Mulder was a real jerk. So I don't think the first time I watched it, I loved it and said, oh, immediately, yes, that's what they're showing. I think you're right, that it's more subtle, and in 2001, maybe, not as much was known about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Cortlan?
I've never had a hard time understanding that in this particular episode, Mulder is back, but he is not okay. I think I've never had a hard time understanding that. I think there's actually a really important line in there. Eventually he says, like, this could happen to anyone. Like, we have to do, he's freaking out. Like, he's freaking out, and he's trying to take drastic action to prevent this from happening to himself and or anyone else ever again, because he's, like, stuck in these terrible memories. And, like, I think there's a really important line in there. I can't remember exactly what he says now, because it's been a little while, but I think that the behavior makes perfect sense. I think that the reason a lot of people have a hard time with it is that it is not ever explicitly resolved. Like, we're going to go straight from 3 words into Empedocles, right, and it's very different. Right. And so it feels unresolved. And I think that's why people have a hard time, especially if they only see it once. They'll be like, well, what the hell?
I had a discussion with someone recently about Empedocles and that the pizza man scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so many people dislike that. And I think it's fair, because we go from 3 words where the entire script is set out showing us that Mulder has PTSD. And then in the next episode, they're joking about who's the father of her baby. Yeah. So there had to have been a conversation that we didn't see. The only way to reconcile those, in my mind, this is how I do with it, is there's something that happened between 3 words and Empedocles that we just didn't get to see, because they're very inconsistent, like you said.
Yeah.
The other thing on this PTSD thing I was thinking is that if we think back to the 2001 mindset, I think back then we were a bit more accustomed to the idea that television characters snap back into place between episodes.
Right. Yeah.
Psychologically, physically, and even the X-Files had been like that, hadn't it? You go from the end of Darkness Falls or something, or Dodcom, and they would need a substantial period of recovery, and then you turn on the TV next week and all is well again. So I can sort of see why viewers at the time especially might have missed some of the implications here.
Yeah.
Or seen it in a slightly different
way. Or just not thought about it the same way that we would now.
Yeah. I think much of my thoughts on the show in general, and this episode in particular, come out of obsessive rewatching.
Fair enough.
Once clearly wasn't enough for me to form the opinion. And I sometimes think back to how I viewed the show when I first started rewatching, which was 7 years ago or something. They're a lot different. I've changed. My opinions have changed a lot in that time, but it's just because I do watch it over and over again. So that could be different from someone who, TV shows are meant to be watched once, right? It needs to hit the viewer as they're watching it, because you might not see it again.
So they need to be able to communicate clearly.
Yeah. So I think maybe there's a failure of the script, or a failure of something if it's only coming across, people aren't recognizing that this is.
Yeah. I think I don't remember exactly what the last scene of 3 words is, but I think that the resolution of 3 words is just not quite enough to put a pin in it and move on, because that's what they do is they put a pin in it and move on to Empedocles.
Yeah.
And so I think whatever it is, it just didn't quite, I guess, probably close it all up for everyone in their mind.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it, then? It seems like from the script there isn't a line in there or cut dialogue or anything about Mulder, you could be suffering from such and such.
Right.
So,
no, there isn't. They never explicitly address it. It's just meant you're meant to get it from. But if you Google PTSD and there are things to look for, classic characteristics. They went down the list and they put them in the script, but it's never explicitly mentioned.
Interesting one.
And then
it is interesting.
Other complaints I hear about 3 words, I have to mention this, is that Scully never tells Mulder. We never hear Scully tell Mulder the baby's his. And there are people who suggest that in this scene, when they first get to Mulder's apartment and he says, I don't know where I fit in, that Scully mouths the words, it's yours. And I can tell you that is not in the script. And Gillian almost never goes off script. She delivers what she's given. And not only that, but it would completely contradict the plan for the rest of the season, because the rest of the season, they're just teasing us, oh, who's the daddy, Yeah,
well, I looked at it again when I was getting ready for this podcast, and I just don't think it looks like she says it. I think it, like maybe a jaw moves in a weird way or something. It doesn't look like she's mouthing something to me.
She's moving her mouth, trying to think of what to say, and
That's
Scully
exactly
does that, and you see it in other episodes, and no one's suggesting that she's sending secret messages to the fans. It's just, she's caught in the moment. She's confused. She's trying to make a decision. That's just, she's trying to get the words out.
I completely, I agree that she's not saying that in that particular moment or mouthing it or whatever. I can totally relate to the idea that she was thinking about saying this and is changing her mind about what this conversation, like she obviously was prepared. She was not Gillian. No, that Scully, the character, was thinking they were going to have a conversation and is now changing her mind about what that conversation is at this moment. Like, I think that it's a moment of indecision on her part. Like it's her own indecision about what she should say now.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what it's conveying. Not that she's trying to give some secret message.
Yeah, I don't think that she would secretly tell him. Like, you know what I don't think that's really Scully's style anyway.
No, but it is talked about in fandom as though it's
a lot
accepted, proven fact. And also in Dead Alive, when Mulder moves his mouth, they say he's saying, I love you.
He says, I love you. Yeah, I've heard that many times.
So, I'm not a believer.
No.
Of either of those. That's okay.
Same.
All right. And I won't go on about this, the rest of this. I've said my say here. Just, in my opinion, the script is telling us that Mulder is suffering from PTSD. And some point between this script and the next, they've had a conversation about who the father is.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
I mean, they must have some. Okay, it's fine.
No,
we can talk about it. I feel like we might talk about it when we get to the end of the season, but obviously they must talk about it. Mulder gives a whole voiceover,
right,
where he's very obviously thinking about it. Like, we don't get to see that. We often don't get to see these conversations, like, unless we get a flashback,
right?
Right. But we're not going to. Fact, yeah, right. And we don't, so it's okay. It's fine. And we can. That's why we love fanfic, right? I don't know. That's probably been written like 1,000 times.
Right. I think in 3 words, it would make sense for Mulder to have a question of who, just because he's trying to figure out how long have I been gone, and let me do the math and how pregnant are you. But by the time you get to essence and existence, he's not asking who, he's just asking how and why.
Yeah. He has a lot of questions,
yeah,
and they're not the same questions anymore.
Right.
And
there we go. Okay. All right. If we can move on to Empedocles. And this, I had to look, this was written by Greg Walker, and I just had to look at how long he had been on the X-Files. He also wrote Brand X with Steve Maida, and he wrote Sure Kill, which I have the script, but I don't remember anything about it. It just... It's as unmemorable as a script as it is as an episode. Okay, but so see, I think the pizza man scene needs to be performed.
Oh no! Oh no!
It's just slightly different in the script than it was. It's
just...
All right, okay.
Got it.
What I'm trying to say is the pizza man's not above suspicion.
I see.
I think there's a hold the pepperoni joke here somewhere.
You think?
Scully smiles, mock-humored, holding the look, until...
Maybe not. Hands her the gift. Anyway, this is for you.
For me, what's the occasion?
So we got to hold the pepperoni joke instead of a nice package joke. To me, it's neither works better than the other. They just chose the package instead of the pepperoni. But
I wonder if is hold the pepperoni, is that coming back from the network saying, okay, that's a bit too risque?
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh,
probably.
I could see that. Yeah. But nice package, isn't it? Okay.
I just think hold the pepperoni conjures up more of an image.
An image.
Yeah, more of the mental image is different. Yeah.
Okay. And this next, there's a note in the script that I don't even understand, but it was worth looking at. This is when Reyes calls Mulder for the first time. So he's at the hospital with Scully and he gets a phone call from Reyes. And in the script, it has her in a phone booth. And then it says a phone booth, which the first AD will remind the director they can carry anywhere if they get in trouble. Never going to happen. I don't know what that means, but I do know that she wasn't in a phone booth, so it didn't happen.
The way I'm reading this, and I'm not sure, but it seems to me like the first assistant director sort of really likes filming scenes in phone booths because it's so convenient. Like you can put a phone booth down anywhere by the side of the road, wherever you are, and quickly shoot a scene. I think that's kind of how I take it.
Okay. And they do have a phone booth in this episode.
Yes. In fact, JJ and I'm pretty sure very explicitly called out the phone booth in our rambling discussion of Empedocles because there is a phone booth in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
They are on the side of the road, like in the woods, and it's very far from the road. Like it's not. It's literally they picked it up and put it wherever they want. It's a very odd phone booth. It's definitely a murder phone booth. Like if you go in that phone booth, they should have known that. Anyway, I love this episode, so it's fine.
Too. Okay, this next one. It's the scene where Mulder and Doggett and Reyes are out in this field, and Reyes explaining, that she saw something, and okay. So she says, in India, Africa, Iran, the Middle East, the Far East, most of the world, there are cultures who take it as a given, who see evil in death the way other people see God in a rose. And in the episode, Mulder says, I saw Elvis in a potato chip once, which is a great line. But in this one, he says, I see dead people. I just read that. I just laughed so hard. It's like, it's just so ridiculous, but I could see him doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if maybe they couldn't reference The Sixth Sense or something.
Too soon, maybe.
Or just Elvis is that was a great line.
Yeah,
the potato chip line
it is
great.
Funny. I think it's a little funnier, the potato chip, but I could see his performance making I see dead people pretty funny as well. So.
As I was reading it, that's what I pictured, and I just thought it was great. I had to include that.
I actually heard something recently which kind of lines up with what Reyes was saying here, because I think I heard that in Japan the murder rate is really low because there's such a strong cultural taboo around death, death is seen as impure, so people murder less. I think it's kind of the suggestion of what I read.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, she's onto something.
Yeah,
I think that's why. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I was thinking.
This is one of my. I'm obviously a Monica Reyes fan, but also I love Monica Reyes in Empedocles, and I'm sad that we don't get more of this Monica Reyes.
Yeah.
I mean, we get great Monica Reyes later. I think there are lots of good points about it, but also I just love this one. Mm-hmm. This is good.
Yeah,
it's just enough. It's just enough crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I love their confrontation. When she is trying to get Mulder to help her, and he ends up saying, "You'll just say anything, won't you?" So the two of them just together are they're such good exchanges that I would like to have seen more Mulder and Reyes working together. Yeah.
I think we talked about that in the episode. People will probably we talked about how did they not meet before? How did they not know
Right,
each
were
other?
they on
Like
each other's
working in the
radars?
FBI, like
Definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah,
He
one
should
of
have
his
been consulting
conferences
her
or
for
something.
years. Yeah.
They didn't. Yeah, he didn't follow her work in satanic ritual murder.
Yeah,
Like it seems like something Mulder would be aware of.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway.
I bet Max was following her too.
Mm.
Unless, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, now this moment. So this is at the end when Mulder finally gives Scully the doll, and she opens it up, and he says, "Is that what you imagined?" And she laughs tearfully, not even close. And then there's a script note, and it's probably my favorite that I've ever read in a script. And the writer says, "Off this moment, and the actors will know how to play it, we dissolve." So I love that they're not even going to try, at the earlier scene, they told, well, Scully should be, joking or whatever. He's not even going to try to tell the actors what to do, how to play this, that they're going to know how to handle it. And it's just, I loved it.
I like that a lot too, because I think it's the kind of thing you probably wouldn't be seeing in season 1 scripts, for example. They had to get to this level of familiarity with the characters to, you might have something similar in an early script, but it wouldn't be expressed quite like this. It's nice.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I went back to see how long he'd been working on the X-Files. So he's been this is by the end of season 8, he'd been there since the beginning of season 7 as a script. He was in the writer's room.
And
Story
he
editor.
Presumably would be, like familiar with the show even before that.
Yeah, he could have watched the entire series.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I hope. But okay.
Okay. Moving on to Vienna. There is some deleted dialogue between Mulder and Doggett, which I think would have caused riots. There's no way fans would have put up with this. This is when they're on the rig, the oil rig, and Mulder says, "We're in the same boat, Agent Doggett. We're just paddling in different directions." Doggett's jaw tightens. "I hate to break it to you, but Agent Scully and I were doing just fine without you." Mulder says, "Agent Scully's not here, is she?" But I cannot believe they ever thought that they could have Doggett say that he and Scully were doing fine without Mulder. That just seems like there's no way. They can't.
Well, which episode is it where we hear that their case success rate has gone up since Doggett joined the department?
It must be later, right?
No, is it later? Well, Kirsch says it.
It was Dead Alive, yeah. Right,
oh,
yeah.
Okay,
before
yeah.
Yeah.
So Doggett's got that
Before
ringing in his ears
happening.
when he thinks of this, when he says this. Yeah.
Doing just fine without him.
I suppose what they were thinking is amp up the hostility early on because we're going to bring him around later. Yeah,
I think they had plenty of hostility. It was a good move to cut this out, but I think you're right that they just wanted to show that they're starting at odds and they're going to end up buddies. Yeah.
This is another great episode. It makes me wish that we could have just had just a few more,
right?
With everybody around.
If we had a season with Doggett, Reyes, Mulder, Scully, that would have been so much fun, and just pair them up in different ways.
Everybody could have had time off.
Yep.
They could have worked it out.
It could have happened.
That's fine. Yeah. Turned out.
Damn it.
Oh well, alas.
Moving on.
Yeah.
And the fourth act of Vienna was rewritten a lot. There was so much going on in it. Originally, they had Scully doing more in the investigation. They had 2 radio technicians who had left the rig. So not only the people killed on the rig, but then 2 radio technicians left the rig. And she found out they had visited 7 other offshore platforms. And it formed a Y shape on the map. And Mulder figured out that meant they're trying to communicate with the mothership. It was a lot. And I'm not going to try reading all that to you because there's a whole bunch of it.
That could have been epic, man. That does sound like the scope for a 2-parter there. With
it does,
all this sort of stuff
and that's
going
one thing you and Tony talked about is like, did they really need more, or did they need less?
Right.
And then the action on the rig when Doggett and Mulder figure out what's going on was very different in the final act, but they simplified that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was a question that Carl and Tony had when they recorded about Vienna. And there's the scene where they're about to jump off the rig, and Doggett says, "Let's do it on a count of 3." And Mulder says, "How about a 20 count?" or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you asked whether it was an ad lib. That countdown was not in the script at all. So they just had, they realize what they need to do, and they run towards the after you. Oh no, and then shit. They left the T off, so it's okay. They can put it on network TV. Yeah,
totally fine.
So either that whole exchange between the two of them was ad libbed, or it was added later in a later version of the script or on set. But so that was fun.
So I think I just, because Tony asked this and I just sort of said it had the ring of something that could have been ad-libbed, but hard to be sure. So
definitely, yeah.
I'm still sort of thinking that it works better with the countdown line in. I think it's a nice moment.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it changed with the scene we actually got on screen. It was Doggett saying we have to do this, and then in the script it seems like it's definitely Mulder's idea. But anyway, either way, I like the way it came out. There's one other thing in the script. I didn't copy it in there, but in one version, when they're talking about what's going on the rig at the end and all the fire, and before they put in the fire, they said, "And we'll remember that Mulder is deathly afraid of fire."
That's funny.
That little note is in there, and then they're like, screw it.
And then they were like, "There's no time. There's no time."
And maybe that was just a dig at Chris Carter. I don't know.
That's funny.
They just put it in there to needle him.
Right, yeah.
Like, remember that one episode?
Yeah. Okay. And
all
then
right, so Alone,
yeah. This is just one silly little thing. When Mulder is investigating, he's on Herman Steitz's property, and he's not supposed to be out there, and he runs into Steitz. In the script, it had him tell Steitz that his name was Skinner. And they changed that to Kirsch for the episode, which I think is funnier.
Yeah.
Just trying to picture Mulder.
Just adds that level of adversarialness.
Yeah, just getting under Kirsch's skin by throwing him out there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, here's another, at the end of this, we get that dreaded TBW to be written. Because this is one where I love the ending of Alone. It's just so adorable. And then the first version of the script I got, I'm like, oh, good. I'm almost at the end when it says Mulder turns. They're still in the wine cellar or whatever it is, with the creature, and it's Mulder turns his back, sees Steitz is gone. Rest of scene TBW. Like, no. And then there's just a little, brief description of what might happen, including the hospital, Doggett's exiting, they talk, that's it, so there's nothing there. So I did then have to get another version of the script, which had the final scenes written. But even that, I kind of love this part. They're in the hospital room with Agent Harrison, and she asks, how did you get out of Antarctica after you ran out of gas? And then we have two lines. We have Scully. Well, first, it was never proven it was a spaceship.
Yeah.
And Mulder, what? Scully. And then the rest of it is not scripted. It's just really David and Gillian doing their thing. So it's fun to get a little more script, but then to know that what we actually see on screen was the actors just having fun. So
yeah. Especially in a show that is not like, there's not improv really. It's not like they're given that kind. I like that that's in there.
Yeah.
We get what we get,
Yeah, I agree.
Of that.
This is not season 8 at all, but in season 5, in Christmas Carol, there's this one moment where the actors are told to improv, and it's when Maggie and Scully get to Tara and Bill's house greeting the first time, and the script says improv greetings all around. And Gillian said, "You're huge."
I knew exactly. I was like, "This is the "you're huge" line." Yeah.
I just love that's Gillian
great.
improvising. I think that's awesome.
That's Gillian improvising how Scully would react in this situation, right. And I really appreciate that about both of them. Good job, ladies. Well done.
Yep.
Okay, so Essence. I'm wondering, we haven't got anything about the baby shower here, have we? The mysterious baby shower. Like, no indication of where all those women came from, who they were.
Who are they?
Shoot.
How much Maggie Scully
I wish I had looked
them.
at what they said that. I think
who
that
are
I didn't.
They? Where did they come from?
Didn't take any notes on that just because it was not different from what we saw on screen at all. But I don't think it. Oh, darn! I feel bad now.
Well, no, I think if it had been anything really noteworthy, it would have jumped out.
I would have noted it. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. The teaser was going to be a Scully voiceover. It's not spelled out, but it just lots of footage of sperm and egg union developing embryo. But it was going to be Scully, and they changed that to a Mulder voiceover. There's a description of Billy Miles, which I thought was very humorous. As the camera circles Dr. Lev drifting down, just about to show us, the door opens, surprising Dr. Lev. A familiar, slight young man enters, Billy Miles, parentheses, who, if you don't know, has a long history on the show, dating back to the pilot when he was the alien abductee at the center of the case that launched Mulder and Scully's incredible journey. However, he was last seen as a returned abductee who was taken for dead, but who came back to life inexplicably by shedding his skin. I'd like, who's he writing this for?
This is exactly what I was just about to say. Like, who's the intended audience here? Because
Right?
like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I had to wonder because it was Chris Carter wrote it, Kim Manners directed it. Who's he saying this to?
Right? Who's he talking
Well,
to? And
unless it's for the network or somebody.
Oh,
yeah, I guess.
Of course.
I guess. But that's not something that they can really explain on the show at this point. Like, at least not in this shot. Like,
Right. Yeah. So maybe it's the network, a note to the network. Like,
yeah. So they don't come back to him saying, "Who the hell's this Billy guy?"
Get someone else. We don't want to use Billy.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't a character. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, and one other script note. This is when Mulder goes to Doggett's house and Doggett's watching a NASCAR race. It says, a NASCAR race in progress with the Fox bug prominent on the screen. Vertical integration at its most vertical.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Little promo there.
Yeah.
There's some deleted dialogue between Mulder and Crane, which I really love. I wish we had time for it. Although I don't know if it furthers the story. It's just nice character beats. This is when, Mulder had gotten Doggett to search through the burned building. Mm-hmm. And Crane was upset about that. He didn't want to have to work on a Saturday, apparently. But they found something that he had missed before. And so Mulder's talking, about they had found something unidentifiable, and Mulder says, the word unidentifiable didn't trigger anything for you at all. And Craner says, I don't answer to you, sir. And then Doggett gets embarrassed about, they missed evidence, and he's trying to get them to leave. And Crane says to Mulder, nobody wants you around here. And Mulder says, nobody ever did. And I really, really like that. It's just so very Mulder. He's going to find a way to pout about whatever situations he's in. It took me back to One Son, at the end of One Son, where Kirsch is saying, why didn't you ever tell anyone? And I've been saying this for years. No one wants to listen. Right. So it's like, this is definitely Mulder's mindset. No one's, and even in 3 words, when he says, this is a magic bullet that's been trying to hit me for years. So I don't know. I just thought this was a nice character beat that worked for me.
Is this the scene where, when Doggett turns up, Crane's annoyed to be there, and he says something about, I was at my kid's ball game. Is this the scene?
Yeah. It's either
so.
That or it's, I think, is there a scene where they pull Crane in and then a later scene where they talk about what Crane found? Or maybe that whole scene is not in there.
I don't know. I just remember last time I watched Essence, when he says, I was at my kid's ball game, I just remember thinking that's a very lazy way to flesh out a character. Like, that's the most hackneyed thing you could possibly say. I don't believe that character.
Yeah.
Anyway. I do like this extract.
I do. There's this, you can cut this if you want, but listening to Vince Gilligan on the Better Call Saul Insider podcast, they talk about exposition and how it can be lazy or how it can be, and he says, what you don't want is, how long have we been brothers? He uses that example all the time. It's like, no, that's the worst thing you could ever see in a TV script is, how long have we been brothers? And I just think about that. I was at my kid's ball game. It's the same kind of thing.
Similar, sort of just a bit jarring, yeah.
Okay, and my final thing, this is one of my favorite parts of Essence. It's a scene where Mulder and Doggett go to Scully's apartment after Mulder's been hit by Billy Miles. So she's patching him up. And in the episode, he teases her for having manos to Pietros. She's hurting him, and then she takes the gauze and boops his nose. That was not scripted. That was not in the script, and I'm guessing that's a moment that Gillian threw in herself. But as originally written, Mulder says, "Careful with that mothering instinct there, Scully," and she tells him to hold still. And he says, "Imagine if he'd connected." "Well, what did he hit you with?" "I told you, his hand." And she says, "Billy Miles?" "Mulder, I know you're tougher than that." Which is really kind of cute, but I like the boop so much better. Yeah.
Great stuff. I think this has been fascinating. It's going to be really interesting if we do a similar episode for season 9, isn't it? Because I think with season 8, we're seeing scripts for for a season that was really strong, unexpectedly strong, you might say. And then season 9, it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of manifests in those scripts in relation to where the show is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I have read them all of season 9 scripts, but for me, the harder part there is I don't know those episodes as well. I will admit that I haven't watched season 9 as much as I've watched 1 through 8. So it's harder to pick out the things that, it's like I was trying to do it as I was reading the scripts. I'm like, is that in the episode? I'm like, yeah, it was. Okay. It's harder for me to pick out the differences, but I can get there by then.
I think too with season 8, it's so interesting because there's so much of the same story, like in all of them, like there's so much to tie them all together that's really interesting to see in the scripts, like the things that come up repeatedly,
Definitely.
Or that come up as the recurring plot. And so that makes season 8, in my mind, that makes season 8 really distinct from pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're probably going to wrap up here. Thank you so much, Cathy, for taking the time to put all this together.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Done a really good job. It's been a lot of fun to listen to. I'm sure people will agree. Cathy, do you want to tell us what you're up to online and all that kind of thing?
I am still, tweeting about the X-Files every day. I'm on Twitter at Kathryn Glins 2. Right now what I'm doing is going back, starting at the beginning, and I'm reading the scripts that I haven't read yet. So I've still got about 10 scripts I haven't read yet. So I'll get to those during my next rewatch. So I'm tweeting as I go.
Excellent. Great. So people should keep an eye out for those tweets. Cortlan, how about you? Where are you? What are you up to?
You can find me online too, on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for my name, Cortlan. Mostly now I'm sharing a lot of hand lettering and calligraphy work. But I do sometimes throw in some fun, like, fan works in there. So come check it out.
Great stuff. Thanks, Cortlan. I'm on Twitter at CKJ Sweeney. The Xcast is at the X_cast. We are also on Facebook with our Facebook page and the Basement group. We are also on Instagram at the Xcast Pod. But yeah, I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this look at the scripts of season 8. We'll be back soon with more X-Files chat. But until next time, listeners, always remember, trust no one.
100 years since Nosferatu first terrified audiences on the big screen.
30 years since Francis Ford Coppola gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And 10 years since Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp.
Vampire Videos is a podcast taking a look at this iconic blood-sucking monster on film and television.
I'm Dan Owen.
And I'm Hugh McStay.
And we're here to guide you through a century of vampirism on film. From Hollywood's golden age with Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula,
to the more lurid hammer horrors of the 60s and 70s starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Through to the 80s boom in vampires, which brought these creatures of the night into the modern age.
And everything this century's had to offer us, from foreign and independent films, spoof comedies, and even teenage love stories. Yes, I'm talking about Twilight.
We aim to cover it all, one bite at a time.
So join us on a voyage into the depths of vampire cinema, old and new, with weekly guests offering their own insights and expertise. And why not follow us on Twitter @VampVideos.
A proud part of the We Made This podcast network, subscribe now to Vampire Videos, and thanks for listening.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter @wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.